Meeting of the Board of Commissioners to order the May 29th, 2019 budget session. I will inform everyone that Chairman Council was under the weather, could not be here today. Commissioner Fairclough is in Asheville at a North Carolina County Association meeting, and Commissioner Booth could not be here today. So the four of us are in charge, you all. So at this point, I will call on Commissioner Lancaster for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. Father, we thank you for every seat filled this evening, for each individual present in this room. We thank you, and Lord, especially for our recent graduates. Our prayer is that your will be done this evening. We pray that you will steer our intentions to align with your presence, to guide us in what we are setting out to accomplish this evening for the residents of our county. We would ask that you would strengthen each of us and provide us with confidence. Cover us with a blanket of honesty and patience. Fill our hearts with joy for the many blessings that we receive daily. Bless this meeting and help us to learn to make every moment of our lives count. Amen.
Amen.
If you'd help. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, could someone just check in the back for, it's just a sound that's coming in, and I don't want that to interrupt what the county manager's doing. So I'll give it just a second while you check. It's just was coming back and I could hear it. And so if you just, everybody be at ease for just a moment.
What kind of sound did you hear?
You could hear the repeat of what it was saying.
I can still hear it.
Yeah, you can still, you can't hear it? You need a Q-tip?
Huh?
You need a Q-tip?
So hearing
Clean
aids.
your ears up. Yeah, hearing
I
aids.
got some hearing aids at home.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Adams, excuse me.
Yes.
I believe it's been taken care of.
Okay. And so tonight, let me tell you, the purpose of the meeting is for the presentation of the FY2020 recommended budget. So I will call on the county manager, Ms. Amy Cannon.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity this evening to present the fiscal year 2020 recommended budget. The budget is balanced in accordance with the North Carolina Local Government Budget and Fiscal Control Act. This evening, you have been provided with copies of the recommended budget as well as copies of this presentation. Before we get into the details of the recommended budget, I'd like to share just a few key numbers. The total countywide recommended budget is $489.7 million. The general fund recommended budget is $323 million. The tax rate to support this budget remains at 79.9 cents per $100 of valuation. 1 penny on the tax rate equals $2.3 million in county revenue. This slide, Commissioners, is just an overview of the topics that I'd like to address this evening. Before we begin a review of the recommended budget, I think it's important to share some of the highlights or accomplishments by the Board of Commissioners during fiscal year 2019. Over the last several years, the approach by the board has been to create long-term sustainability through a path of continuous improvements. We created parameters to guide this long-term process, and those parameters include honoring our fiscal policies, a focus on core and mandated services. It includes making strategic and data-driven decisions. It also includes our goal of continuing to provide quality services balanced with being fiscally responsible. Our goal is also to continue identifying operational efficiencies and merging decentralized county functions. The board has remained committed to this process over the last several years, and I'd like to share the progress on a few key initiatives specifically. To make data-driven decisions, the board approved performance measurement through key performance indicators last year. Our Information Services Department has continued this implementation and, in fact, has gone through a significant training process with 3 departments. Those 3 departments have developed their KPIs and are beginning to measure their performance. In an effort to seek operational efficiencies, we've continued to prioritize business process reviews. 3 major departments have been reviewed this year by our Business Intelligence Division. That includes 28 different divisions, and they've reviewed 175 different processes. During fiscal year 2019, we successfully merged the Health Department IT function with the County Information Technology Department. Through this process, the technology platforms have been consolidated, and we've eliminated redundant technology. 2 years ago, the Board of Commissioners reactivated the Public Safety Task Force with 2 goals, and that was to create a sustainable funding formula and also to update the contract. Those recommendations have been included in this fiscal year 20 budget. The board met several times during fiscal year 19 to refine the capital planning model and further to prioritize projects and the Capital Investment Fund. This effort by the board has created a long-term sustainable approach to capital planning. Also during this year, the board entered into a key partnership with Fayetteville Technical Community College to create an emergency services training center. This center will have an impact beyond the borders of Cumberland County, as it will serve as a regional training facility for firefighters and emergency services personnel. And finally, the Board of Commissioners worked with the Mayor's Coalition to develop a new 4-year sales tax agreement that was approved by all local governments within the county during the month of January. As you can see, the Board of Commissioners has made significant progress on these initiatives and key strategies to achieve sustainability. Now I'd like to turn your attention to the fiscal year 2020 recommended budget. We'll begin with a discussion of revenue. Ad valorem taxes are budgeted at $165.5 million. This represents a $1.7 million increase over the current year budget. Our motor vehicle collections have remained strong. We project collections next year at $19.8 million, a $1.4 million increase over the current year budget. Sales tax is our second largest revenue source in the general fund. You can see from this chart that there's a continued slight improvement over the last several years in sales tax. For fiscal year 20, our sales tax is budgeted at $43.3 million, an increase of $701,000 over fiscal year 19. The recommended budget includes an appropriation of $8.2 million in fund balance to balance the budget. This appropriation is within the board's previously approved fund balance policy. At this point, I'd like to transition to the expenditure side of the recommended budget, but let's first have a discussion about departmental requests. This year, our departments requested additional funding of $15.7 million. Included in this, but not limited, is 43 new positions, 78 vehicles, and $881,000 in capital outlay. Now, as we reviewed the requested budget, our first focus was to maintain our current levels of service and to continue our mission of providing quality services to the citizens. Second, our focus was to allocate funding based on the board's strategic goals. Development of the recommended budget began with $1.8 million in unfunded legislative mandates. In February, we were notified of an increase of 1.2% in the contribution rate to the retirement system. The cost to the county is $1.1 million. The retirement system is addressing future projected funding shortfalls and is requiring all local governments to increase the employer contribution rate. We expect future increases in fiscal years 21 and 22. The second legislative mandate relates to our juvenile detention subsidy payments. As you may recall, the Juvenile Justice Reinvestment Act becomes effective December the 1st, 2019. This will increase the number of 16 and 17-year-olds that are housed in the juvenile detention facility. The county and the state share the cost of the daily rate for housing juveniles. The county's share for this partial year of implementation is an additional $267,000. The third legislative mandate impacts our foster care board expenses. Recently, there have been legislative changes that have increased the number of children in our care. The first policy change is the substance-affected infant policy. In addition, raising the maximum age for foster care from age 18 to 21 has also increased the number of children in our care. The county's portion of this projected increase is $414,000. Four key funding priorities were identified to guide the development of the recommended budget. Those funding priorities are recruitment and retention, emergency preparedness, providing quality services, and financial sustainability, but really most directly targeted at our other post-employment benefits. The funding priorities identified align with the county's mission, vision, core values, and the board's strategic goals. As you will begin with our first funding priority of recruitment and retention. As you may recall, in fiscal year 2019, we documented increasing employee turnover and ongoing challenges with recruitment. The board approved funding for an outside assessment to get an understanding of our challenges and also to receive some recommendations. That assessment was very comprehensive, and it was completed this fiscal year. The consultant looked at many areas. They looked at our retention statistics. They looked at our pay policies and our pay practices. They also looked at workforce dynamics, and they did a limited review of our classification system and our compensation system, and they also did an internal and external survey. Since recruitment and retention is one of our funding priorities this year, I'd like to take a few moments and share the findings of that outside assessment and then provide the recommendations that the consultant has suggested. First of all, turnover. Our turnover has remained high at 20%. The study found that our average tenure of an employee is only 8 years, with 69% of separations occurring within their first 5 years of service. This chart shows how we compare with other local governments in turnover for the year 2018. The city of Fayetteville documented turnover at 13%. You can see other counties in the range of 12 to 17%. I think it's important to note that Cumberland County is not the only county struggling with recruitment and retention and turnover. We have reviewed what other counties are doing. Many other counties are looking at changing their policies. Other counties like Durham and Guilford have done compensation and classification reviews and are in several phases of that implementation this fiscal year. A significant component of the study was to look at our current pay practices. And that's important because these pay practices provide the foundation in the county's ability to remain competitive in the marketplace. The study found that our cost of living adjustments have not kept pace with the consumer price index, or more importantly, with competing employers. You can see from this chart that documents the average COLA over the last 3 decades. The average COLA has reduced from 3% in the 1990s to an average of only 1% since 2010. Other findings related to our pay practices include the following. The study found that our salary schedule has not been adjusted consistently. The result of that is that our entry rates of pay are very low. Secondly, our promotional policy is limited. It restricts employee movement within the range, and that creates a salary compression issue. In addition, the consultant reviewed a sample of 34 high turnover classifications that involved various occupational categories. The assessment found that the minimum salary was 10 to 44% below the market for 15 of the 34 classifications. As I mentioned earlier, an employee survey was part of the outside assessment, and we had excellent participation at 69% of the surveys being returned. The 3 top issues expressed by 65% of those that responded were this: that pay and benefits are most important, that they would like consideration of work and life balance policies, and finally, they would like consistent application of policies across county departments. We also surveyed department heads for their perspective. The majority indicated that reducing turnover should be our priority, and that our challenges stem from a lack of competitive pay as well as a lack of policies that support that work-life balance. These were the findings from the outside assessment. Now I'd like to share the recommendations from the consultant based on these key findings. The outside assessment provided recommendations in 2 key areas: our current pay practices and human resource policies. The recommendation is that the county consistently apply COLA adjustments annually to recognize inflation and also to be competitive in the marketplace. Secondly, it's recommended that we review and adjust classifications that are not competitive. That addresses that minimum salary or the entry level of pay. Thirdly, it's suggested that we review and adjust salaries to address inequities based on years of service or unique work considerations. and this addresses the salary compression issue that I mentioned earlier. Due to the funding impact of these recommendations, the consultant suggested a 3-year phased implementation. The consultant also recommended policy changes to address some of our challenges. The recommendations include flexible work schedules, tuition assistance, targeted training linked to career development, and also a very detailed policy review. These policy changes support best practices and have been implemented by other counties across the state. Several of these recommendations are included in the fiscal year 20 recommended budget. Before we begin to review the recommendations, I'd like to share a new approach we're trying this year in budgeting salaries and fringe benefits. But I'd first like to provide some background to set the stage. The county began to experience turnover in 2016, as well as recruiting challenges. That trend has continued, and it was evident in the June 30th, 2018 annual audit. That audit documented an underspending of salaries and fringe benefits in the amount of $10 million. We're still struggling with recruitment and retention, and so we believe that trend will still continue at the end of this fiscal year. Reducing turnover and improving our recruitment process is a multi-year process. It will not happen overnight. And since it is a multi-year process, we recommend utilizing a portion of the projected salary and fringe benefit funds that will be unspent in the next or upcoming fiscal year. The fiscal year 20 budget employs this new strategy or approach by budgeting salaries and fringe benefits at 98.5% for some county departments. Specifically, it's departments that have greater than 30 employees and that have a documented history of unspent salary funds in the range of 3 to 5%. 1.5% creates $1.3 million that can be utilized to implement recruitment and retention strategies without identifying a new revenue source to support those strategies. Now for the recommendations around recruitment and retention. The recommended budget includes a 2% cost of living adjustment effective in July at a cost of $2 million. To address entry pay and the compression issue, we recommend adjusting the salary range up by 1%. Additionally, we're recommending an increase in the 401k contribution of 1%. The cost of this is $850,000. A review of participating counties across the state in employer 401k contribution reveals that the average county contribution is in the range of 3 to 5%. And since that's portable and moves from one local government employer to another, that is been used as a recruiting tool and also a retention tool. In addition, the recommended budget includes $578,000 for Phase 1 of the market adjustments. In addition, we're recommending a reimbursement-based tuition assistance program. We're beginning this with a budget of $50,000. This will be tuition assistance that's tied to specific career development related to county government. We're also recommending a work options program, which provides flexible work hours. This addresses that work-life balance. The options include a compressed work schedule or a staggered work schedule, or even telecommuting if it's appropriate. There is no budgetary impact of these recommendations. We believe this will improve morale and increase productivity. Our second funding priority this evening is providing quality services while being fiscally responsible. And specifically, I'd like to discuss our new positions. Departments again requested 43 new positions at a cost of $2.4 million. This evening, we're recommending 19 new positions at a cost of $809,000. As we reviewed the departmental requests for new positions, we looked at those requests that improved or provided efficiency or created cost savings. We also looked for situations where there was a significant gap in service delivery or an inability to meet volume. In county administration, we're recommending an additional budget and management analyst position at a cost of $78,000. One current budget analyst has been assigned to assist in the integration of the key performance indicators into the budget process. Our goal is to measure our performance and provide the board with data-driven feedback and information for future decisions. We've also compared our staffing level of 2 analysts with our peer counties who appear to have an average of 5 to 6 budget analysts. For the Animal Control Department, we're recommending a veterinary care technician position at a cost of $47,000. This position will further enhance our shelter operations by ensuring quality care and thus increasing our animal adoptability. We believe this position can work with a veterinarian position and reduce cost by performing minor surgical procedures in-house and reduce our outside cost. For our Human Resources Department, we currently have a part-time position that maintains our classification system and our compensation system, and those are different systems to be maintained. That one employee is retiring in December. We would like to replace that part-time employee with a full-time position and bring that position on as soon as possible after July 1st for some overlap or cross-training. Maintaining the classification system and the compensation system is complex. The skill set for classification is different than the skill set to maintain a compensation system. We believe that cross-training is appropriate in this situation to maintain our current systems. In the fiscal year 21 budget, we'll abolish the part-time position. For the Public Health Department, we're recommending 1 environmental health specialist position in the wastewater section at a cost of $56,000. This position is recommended because of the high customer volume and our inability to respond as quickly as we would like to customer requests for inspections and also for complaint follow-up. The staffing levels are also low in comparison to other counties our size. The Board of Health requested 8 additional school nurses. The recommended budget includes a recommendation for 3 new school health nurses at a cost of $163,000. As you may recall, last year the board added 7 new school health nurses, and we did that because we ranked last in the state for the nurse-to-student ratio. The Board of Health has an ongoing goal to continue to reduce that ratio. The recommendation supports the Board of Health's goal, and it also supports the Board of Education's request for additional school health nurses. The recommended budget includes funding in the amount of $125,000 to add 2 detectives in the Youth Services Division. This is needed to manage the anticipated increase in the juvenile caseload due to Raise the Age initiative. In the Department of Social Services, we're adding 6 income maintenance positions at a cost of $268,000. These positions are 100% federally funded through our energy programs, crisis intervention, and our low energy income assistance. Previously, we contracted with the Salvation Army to administer this program. The contract will not be renewed after this fiscal year, so effective July 1st, the Department of Social Service will begin administering these energy programs. In the Care Domestic Violence Center, we're abolishing 2 part-time positions and creating 1 full-time position at a net cost of $25,000. This will reduce our overtime cost since we can reduce the daily shifts from 14 hours a day to 10 hours. Our third funding priority is emergency preparedness. After experiencing 2 significant natural disasters, Hurricanes Matthew and Florence, within a 2-year period, it became evident that our staffing levels were not adequate for the event itself, but more so for that long recovery period. The recommended budget includes a new emergency management planner position at a cost of $62,000. Also under emergency services, we currently have 1 quality assurance position. The budget includes a recommendation for 2 additional quality assurance positions at $118,000. Our final funding priority is financial sustainability, but again, it's specifically related to other post-employment benefits, or OPEB. I think it's helpful to first begin with a definition of OPEB, and that's simply benefits that are provided to retirees by state and local governments across the United States, and the most common benefit is health insurance. The North Carolina State Treasurer and the Local Government Commission has begun addressing the OPEB liability. The OPEB liability represents the future cost of the benefits provided to retirees. The calculated OPEB benefit can be significant and has a direct impact on the county's bond rating. The Local Government Commission has recommended for some years establishing an irrevocable trust. The fiscal year 20 budget includes 2 strategies to address the liability. First, the Board of Commissioners previously took action in April and moved the post-65 retirees to a fully insured health plan. The impact of that has been significant. That one strategy has reduced our OPEB liability by 40%, or $119 million. This reduction will be recognized in the June 30th, 2019 annual financial report. Our second strategy is to establish that irrevocable trust. The fiscal year 20 budget includes an initial contribution of $1 million. This has been funded from the group Health Insurance Fund Balance. With this initial contribution and future contributions over the next several years, we believe that will result in a future reduction of our OPEB liability. This ends the discussion of our new positions and our funding priorities. And at this point, I'd like to share a few other key items included in the recommended budget. In the area of education, the school board requested $89 million. This was an 11% increase over the current year funding. The recommendation this year is to remain at $80,150,000, which is the same appropriation as the current year. In fiscal year 2004, the county and the Board of Education entered into the first ever funding agreement in this community. And that agreement was reviewed and modified and extended over the years until it expired June 30th, 2018. That agreement provided a systematic methodology for appropriating funds to the school system. It was a benefit to both entities in that you were able to predict future funding based on a funding mechanism. The recommendation this evening is for county staff and staff from the Board of Education to immediately begin working on a new funding formula after July 1st, with a recommendation of a funding formula to both elected bodies by November of 2019. Fayetteville Technical Community College requested an increase of $704,000. The recommended budget includes an appropriation of $12.1 million, an increase of just over $440,000. Departments requested 78 vehicles at a cost of $5.3 million. This evening, we're recommending 15 vehicles at a cost of $878,000 for the various departments listed. For community agency funding, the recommendation is $486,000, and there are no recommended increases in funding. I mentioned earlier about combining decentralized county functions, and we did that this year successfully with the health department IT function and the county IT department. Our next step is combining the decentralized county function of 5 employees in the public library community relations division with our 4 county public information department. This will create a consolidated communications and engagement team. This would enhance performance by expanding our communication platform and also expanding our multimedia content. The consolidation would ensure standardization, consistent messaging, and county-wide branding through this coordinated programming. It would also leverage resources for emergencies, county event coverage, and community engagement. This 9-member team is very similar in size to the 7-member City of Fayetteville corporate communications team. This ends our discussion of the general fund, and I'd like to move to a discussion of the separate funds. For community transportation, the recommendation is to expand a part-time administrative position to full-time at a cost of $20,400, and this would be covered by administrative funds provided by the state. In our employee pharmacy, we're recommending establishment of a part-time pharmacist position at a cost of $117,000. Currently, we have 1 full-time pharmacist, but our pharmacy has hours that extend beyond 40 hours a week, and we use contract pharmacists to fill in. We believe that adding the part-time pharmacist is a more cost-effective option. For our capital investment fund, with the development of the capital investment fund last year, many expenditures were moved from the general fund to the capital investment fund. The fund now includes county capital expenditures, debt service, maintenance and repair, and technology. The recommended budget includes an appropriation of $24.8 million for the Capital Investment Fund. The recommended budget includes additional county funding of a little over $146,000 due to an outside funding reduction. Over the last several years, we've continued to evaluate the services of our group homes. But this year, we believe a more comprehensive review of our youth residential services is needed. Specifically, we need to identify our community needs and then further identify the gaps in service delivery. And finally, based upon this information from the comprehensive review, we'll develop strategies to meet these unmet needs. The county management will work with the Department of Social Services and bring back recommendations to the board in fiscal year 20. The recommended budget includes the recommendations presented in April by the Public Safety Task Force. The following formula was presented. First, we'll utilize the Special District Fire Fund as the mechanism for generating fire tax funding. Second, we'll establish the special district rate at 15 cents per $100 evaluation, an increase of 3 3/4 cents. The baseline funding for all districts will remain at 10 cents per 100. We'll continue the funding formula for low wealth districts at 1 1/4 cents. The remaining 3 3/4 cents will be distributed to all volunteer fire departments through supplements, incentives, and grants. The Public Safety Task Force has worked over the last 2 years to develop that sustainable funding mechanism and also to create an updated contract between the county and the contracting fire departments. The Public Safety Task Force approved the updated contract in the month of April. As of today, there has been no agreement by the county fire departments on the proposed contract. Implementation of the new funding mechanism is contingent upon agreement with the new contract. In essence, our current contract does not support the structure of the new funding formula. For our solid waste enterprise fund, we're recommending replacement of equipment in the amount of $2 million for Ann Street and Wilkes Road. This new equipment will create efficiencies and also reduce the cost of maintaining older equipment. This ends our review of the separate funds. I'd like to take just a few moments and mention some new initiatives for fiscal year 20 and also give you an update on some continuing initiatives. To continue our goal of identifying efficiencies and streamlining our operations, we recommend a review of our fleet management operation. We believe that that's prudent to make sure that this is working as efficiently as possible and also to protect our significant investment in our fleet. This review will be completed in fiscal year 20. For our Animal Control Department, we're recommending a thorough review of the Animal Control Ordinance. A review was completed about 10 years ago, but many factors have changed. We believe the time is appropriate to review the ordinance and also evaluate the effectiveness of our pet license program. We'll continue to pursue mergers of decentralized county functions. That's one of the parameters that the board approved in creating long-term sustainability. We'll continue in fiscal years 21 and beyond looking at merger of decentralized human resource functions and the information technology functions decentralized and housed at the Department of Social Services and our public library. Some ongoing initiatives. As you know, County IT has been rolling out Laserfish, which is our document management system. It's a storage system and also provides digital access. They're continuing to roll this out to county departments. And finally, our tax administration software is scheduled to go live in December of 2019. Our land management software in our planning and inspections department is scheduled to go live in December 2020. The recommended budget is presented this evening for your review and consideration. Staff look forward to working with the Board of Commissioners as you develop your adopted budget. Our goal in preparing the budget was to support and advance your strategic goals and continue the initiatives to ensure financial sustainability and that continuous improvement process. I first want to acknowledge the dedication and commitment of our workforce as they strive to meet the needs of our citizens by maintaining our core value of providing excellent customer service. I also want to thank our department heads and their staff who put a lot of time in to preparing their requested budgets. We ask for a lot of information and a lot of feedback, and we ask a lot of questions. So we appreciate their time in working with us throughout this process. I'd also like to recognize our budget team. I'd like to ask Heather Harris to stand, Deborah Shaw, and we were joined this year by our management fellow, Darian Cobb. Please stand. These young ladies have done a yeoman's job in preparing this recommended budget. I'd also be remiss if I didn't recognize Vicki Evans, our finance director, who assisted along the way, our management team, and many others in our administration department. The board previously approved a budget schedule. Our first meeting is Monday, June 3rd at 5:30. It's a work session that will be in room 564. We have a second session on Tuesday, June 4th at 5:30. And for the viewing public, we have a public hearing scheduled for Monday, June 10th at 7 p.m. in room 118. Commissioners, thank you for your attention this evening.
Thank you, Madam Manager. We have received your budget for the county commissioners. We would also like to indicate that we do have a Board of Commissioners meeting on Monday morning, for those who would like to know. And again, the work session is Monday, June 3rd at 5:30 in room 564. I'd like to thank the manager and the staff for an excellent presentation tonight. I think each commissioner will review and be ready for the work session on Monday. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair,
Oh.
Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
I failed to note that the budget is available on the county's website.
I just asked her that.
At co.cumberland.nc.us. My apologies.
That was my fault. I asked Ms. Collinard, and she told me it was on there, and I meant to mention that. Thank you so very
Yes, sir.
much. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second? Is there a second? It's been moved and second. All those in favor? We are adjourned.